The International Criminal Court dropped a bombshell: arrest warrants. These were not just any warrants, they were for high-profile figures, sending ripples through the global political landscape. For Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a man who has been at the helm of Israeli politics for years, Netanyahu's leadership has always been controversial, but this was unprecedented. And for former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Gallant, known for his hardline military strategies, now faced accusations that could tarnish his legacy forever. The charges: war crimes, crimes against humanity. The world watched, stunned, as the details began to emerge. The ICC's evidence was damning. Years of investigations had culminated in a comprehensive dossier that left little room for doubt. The courtrooms were filled with tension as the evidence was presented. It pointed to atrocities in Gaza. The conflict, long a point of international contention, had seen numerous allegations of human rights violations. The ICC's findings brought these allegations into sharp focus. Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire, homes destroyed, lives shattered. The court saw enough to issue warrants. The images of families amidst the rubble were heart-wrenching, a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. Enough to send shockwaves through the international community. Netanyahu, defiant. The news spread like wildfire, with world leaders and international organizations quickly reacting. The implications of these warrants were profound. He raged against the court, called the warrants absurd, anti-Semitic, a reward for terrorism. Netanyahu's response was swift and fierce as he sought to rally his supporters and discredit the ICC's actions. His allies echoed his fury. Israeli government officials and politicians stood firmly behind Netanyahu, denouncing the ICC and its findings. The rhetoric was intense, with accusations flying in all directions. The US predictably condemned the ICC, but the warrants stood. The United States, a longtime ally of Israel, was quick to voice its disapproval, but the ICC remained resolute in its decision, a stark indictment of Israel's actions. The documents laid bare a series of events that painted a grim picture of the conflict. The ICC's stance was clear and unwavering, a challenge to its impunity. Activists and human rights organizations saw this as a pivotal moment, a chance to hold powerful figures accountable for their actions. Protests erupted, demanding justice and accountability, and the beginning of a long, arduous battle. The legal proceedings promised to be lengthy and complex, with both sides preparing for a protracted fight. The world watched, knowing that the outcome could reshape the landscape of international justice. Netanyahu didn't just rant, he acted. He unleashed the full force of Israeli intelligence. Their target? The ICC itself. Mossad, the infamous spy agency, went to work. They shadowed ICC officials, tapped their phones, hacked their emails. They wanted dirt, anything to discredit the court. Intimidation was their weapon. Threats, veiled and not so veiled, were made. Careers were on the line, families were mentioned. The message was clear: back off. The warrants had teeth. They restricted Netanyahu's movements. No longer could he travel freely. Over 120 countries were now off-limits. The EU, a staunch supporter of the ICC, made its position clear. Netanyahu was not welcome. The UK hinted at arrest. The net was closing in. For a man used to the world stage, it was a blow. His international standing, already shaky, took another hit. The walls were closing in. For Palestine, it was a victory. A momentous occasion that marked a significant milestone in their long and arduous journey. The streets were filled with jubilant crowds, waving flags and chanting slogans of freedom and justice. It was a sight to behold, a testament to their resilience and unwavering spirit, a moral one at least. The sense of achievement was palpable, even if the tangible gains were still out of reach. The people knew that this was just one step in a much larger battle, but it was a step forward nonetheless. The gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone. The somber expressions on their faces told a story of hope mingled with caution. The warrants gave weight to their claims, their fight for recognition, their struggle for justice. These pieces of paper, stamped and sealed, were more than just legal documents. They were symbols of a long-overdue acknowledgement of their plight. The leaders stood firm, their voices unwavering as they addressed the press, their words echoing the sentiments of millions. The war of legitimacy, as some called it, had shifted. The courtroom battles, the international debates, the endless negotiations, all of it had taken on a new dimension. The legal victories were not just about winning cases. They were about changing perceptions, altering narratives, and challenging the status quo. The world was beginning to see the Palestinian struggle in a new light. Palestine had scored a point. The world was watching and listening. The news spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the globe. People gathered around screens, their eyes glued to the unfolding events. The international community was taking notice, and the voices of the Palestinian people were being heard louder than ever before. It was a moment of validation, a sign that their efforts were not in vain. The ICC's actions sent a message, a powerful message that reverberated through the halls of power and across the world. It was a declaration that justice would not be denied, that the cries of the oppressed would not go unheard. The judges, with their solemn faces and decisive actions, became symbols of hope and accountability, a message that resonated far beyond The Hague. From the bustling streets of New York to the quiet villages of Africa, the impact was felt everywhere. The headlines blared the news, and people from all walks of life paused to take it in. It was a moment of global solidarity, a reminder that the fight for justice knows no borders, a message of hope for the oppressed. For those who had long been silenced, it was a beacon of light. The images of hopeful faces, of communities coming together, painted a picture of resilience and unity. It was a reminder that no matter how dark the times, there is always a glimmer of hope, a message of accountability for the powerful. The world leaders, the politicians, the decision-makers, they were all watching. The actions of the ICC served as a stark reminder that power comes with responsibility and that justice will eventually catch up with those who abuse it. The reactions were mixed, but the underlying message was clear. The era of impunity was coming to an end. Section 5. A chorus of condemnation. Israel and the U.S. respond. Israel and the U.S., as expected, reacted with fury. They condemned the ICC, calling the warrants outrageous, a travesty of justice. Senator Lindsey Graham, a staunch Israel supporter, threatened sanctions against the ICC and against any country that cooperated with the court. President Biden, though less bellicose, was clear in his opposition. The U.S. would not stand idly by. Section 6. Divided we stand. The international community's reaction. The international community's reaction to the recent events has been a complex tapestry of support, condemnation, and strategic silence. The international community was divided. On one hand, there were countries that stood firmly by the International Criminal Court, advocating for justice and accountability. Some countries, mostly in Europe, stood by the ICC. They believed that the rule of law must be upheld at all costs, and that no nation should be above international law. They supported the rule of law. They condemned Israel's actions. These nations argued that the ICC's involvement was crucial in maintaining global order and preventing impunity. Others, particularly in Africa, were more hesitant. They had their own historical and political reasons for their stance. They saw the ICC as a tool of Western imperialism. For these countries, the court's actions were seen as another form of external control and interference in their sovereignty. They sympathized with Israel's plight. They believed that Israel was being unfairly targeted and that the complexities of the situation were not being fully understood by the international community. The warrants had exposed a rift. This rift was not just about the specific case at hand, but about deeper issues of international governance and justice. A rift between those who believed in international justice. These were the nations and groups that saw the ICC as a necessary institution for holding powerful states and individuals accountable, and those who prioritized realpolitik. For them, the realities of power and influence in international relations took precedence over idealistic notions of justice. This division highlighted the ongoing struggle to balance moral principles with political pragmatism on the global stage. Section 7. The Long Game. Netanyahu's legal and political battles. Netanyahu, never one to back down, vowed to fight. He hired a team of lawyers, the best money could buy, their mission, to clear his name. He also went on the offensive. He launched a public relations blitz. He accused the ICC of bias. He played the victim card. His goal was twofold: to undermine the court's legitimacy, and to rally support at home. Section 8. A stain on the blue and white. Israel's tarnished image. The ICC's actions had consequences. For Israel's image. For its standing in the world. The stain of war crimes was hard to erase. The Jewish state, once a symbol of resilience, was now seen as an aggressor. The international community, once sympathetic, was now wary. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. Section 9. The future uncertain. The ICC and Israel at a crossroads. The ICC's investigation continued. The warrants remained in place. The standoff between Israel and the court showed no signs of abating. The stakes were high. For Netanyahu, for Israel, for the future of international justice. The world watched and waited for the next chapter in this unfolding drama.